Hello one and all, and welcome to something a little different. Now let me start today's video with a story. A little while ago, a young man contacted me and he asked what I thought of the Army Painter range of paints. And at the time, the honest answer I had to give him was that I didn't really know. I hadn't used a lot of their paints, and particularly, the questions he was asking I couldn't answer. I didn't know. Now, you've seen that I do use a lot of Army Painter products. Things like the Quickshade Dips, for example. I use a lot of their primers, but the actual paints themselves I tend to have covered from other ranges. So Citadel, Vallejo, I've got a couple of other bits and pieces hidden around there. But as far as actual paint, I had that covered. So I'd never really picked up any of the Army Painter range. Now, being honest, when I first encountered Army Painter a few years ago, they were 20 paints and the dips. So you can imagine my surprise when it turned out there's a range of 124 paints. It's ridiculous. And they are some really cool colors. There's a group out there called Tale of Painters, and they've done a complete overview of every single paint in the range, which I will link to in the description below. It is thoroughly worth checking out. They did great work, and there's a lot of comparisons to Citadel colors there too, which you're probably going to find useful. But I was contacted by the guys at Army Painter, and they asked, hey, would you be interested in doing a review and some tutorials? We'll send you along the paints, and you can have some fun with them. Do what you want, and just promote what we've got. And at first, there was a little, I don't know, because again, that preconception of what I remembered Army Painter being. But with that question that I had been asked in mind, I figured, well, go ahead. The little voice that said, paint, won out. And I said, yeah, sure. With the provision that I'd be able to continue doing other things too. So today is kind of the first, it's not so much a tutorial as me having a play around. Grabbing some colors, grabbing some paints, and just experimenting a little bit. And this is the result that we've got. Oh, I'll knock that around. After this took me 45 to 50 minutes, we'll round it up. We'll say an hour worth of work, and this is what I've got after using the Army Painter stuff. I have to admit, I am way more impressed than I thought I would be. So, I'm more than happy to share what I've discovered, as it were. And if there's any questions you guys have, feel free. Let's get into this. Let's have a look at how this system works. So to start off with, I've got here, this is Eliza Stone. She's a miniature from Artisan Designs, which is part of the North Star group, I believe. And I really just wanted something different to paint. She's pretty cool. I really like the figure. Do you remember, maybe, back in the 90s when Westerns were coming back? What was that one? The Quick and the Dead, I think, with Sharon Stone and Gene Hackman. I'm pretty sure this is who she's kind of riffing off. But it's a great miniature, no matter who it's referencing. Now, what I want to do is to kind of look at the Army Painter system. Because, same as with Citadel, they suggest, a base color, a shade, a layer, blah, blah, blah. What we're going to do is stick to the Army Painter method, which is color, dip, and then they say done. But there is sort of they call it a masterclass session where you go ahead and you add a highlight or two, and that's what we're going to do. I really just want to have some fun with this and play around, get some first impressions out there. Now, started off, I gave her a spray of Desert Yellow, which they claim is a 100% match with the stuff that's in the pot. And I'll be honest, I've used Desert Yellow spray on a few things before. It's pretty good. It is a little bit thicker than some of the other color sprays that they've got going, so you do need to be careful applying it. Now, as you can see, I've only got a few colors in front of me. I will link them all and name them all in the description below. As someone who's coming to Army Painter for the first time in a while, learning all of the names, whoo boy, we're gonna have some fun with that. So let's stop mucking around and let's get painting. Now, just quickly before we get to painting, I want to talk about prep work for Army Painter paints. Now, one thing they do suggest is that you want to shake thoroughly, and they mean that, because I get the impression that some of these have been sitting in the warehouse for a little while. So I drop an agitator in there. These are from AK. These are just little not silver, these are stainless steel ball bearings. Army Painter also sells a thing of them as well. So if you want to just pick them all up from the same place, you can very easily do that. I've dropped one of these in each of the bottles, given them a good shake, and it's not a problem after that point. But it does get a little much on your arm when you've got a whole set to do. So something else you might want to invest in is one of these. Now this is a nail polish shaker. It's cost me 20 euros, so about $25 to $30. And you... Sorry, I love this thing so much. You pop your agitator in, your little steel ball, you strap down the subject, and then... Whisper quiet! It's a paint shaker. You know, you run that for about a minute, and it's all good, okay? You probably don't need to do that more than once, but I'm going to do it with each of these paints just to start them off. So let's get our tanned flesh and start painting it last. Now I'm going to start with her skin because there are a lot of other things that are sort of over top of it. You want to paint from the lowest layer first. So if I were to start with her shirt, for example, and then try and paint her skin, I'm going to get, you know, shirt all over the skin. But this is, ooh, that's going on real nice. I am using the Army Painter brushes too. This is one of the Regiment brushes. Kind of similar to the, what would you call it? Medium layer brush, maybe a little bit bigger. And the application on that over Desert Yellow is very simple. That's actually going on really nice. I thought I might need to come back and give that a second coat, but in actual fact, that might do the job. And then move straight onto her shirt. Now that actually went on in one coat, so I'm fairly impressed. And Brain Matter Beige that I'm using here is doing much the same. I might need to touch this up in a couple of areas, but let's just pop this on very quickly. And I'm getting some good vibes off of this, to be honest. Now for an off-white to go on quite that smoothly, that was a coat and a half, let's say. There was one or two spots I needed to touch up, but I'm very impressed, I'll be honest. Now I've got some Griffin Blue, and this is kind of a denim-looking colour. It's a little bit brighter than I want these trousers to actually end up, but I'm kind of deliberately trying to play into... Oh, those are her boots, whoops! To play into the Army Painter method, so... Because we are going to be shading this all over, I'm going to go a little bit brighter with my base colours, and that will bring down all of these quite bold, cartoony colours. I'm really coming to quite like the richness of colour in some of these, eh? So this is going on. Might need another thin coat in a few places, but nothing too out of the ordinary there. Let's just fix that up now. And then we're not going to needlessly overcomplicate things. I've got some leather brown, and we're going to paint all of the leather details. Now it's worth remembering that these Army Painter paints, they're not formulated like the Citadel range, so they don't sort of claim that there's base colours and layer colours. So if some of them aren't covering perfectly in that first coat, think of them similarly to a layer paint in that respect, though I am actually fairly impressed so far with the coverage on most of them. Especially after a couple of minutes in the paint wiggler. So let's get all of these leather details. I'm going to paint her hat a different brown, I think. But gun belt, boots, all that fun stuff. Now I've got a little fur brown, which is an Army Painter colour that I've used quite a bit previously. I really like this one. This is similar to like Vallejo's mahogany brown. If you want kind of a warm red leather effect to things, this one works really well. And again, coverage on this is just fantastic. So let's finish off her hat. Now can you believe I was going to forget her gun? Goodness me. So a little bit of gunmetal, funnily enough. Let's fill that in, and I'll touch in her belt buckles with a slightly smaller brush, I think. Now because all of these colours are going to end up looking much darker, and I wanted to have a very nice bright red scarf, I'm using pure red here. Just take the time. Oh my goodness, this is bright. Let's see. I'm really looking forward to getting the shade on her. and seeing what that does to these colors. And now with a little necromancer cloak, let's paint in her hair. Now it's worth pointing out that each time I am cutting away, oh, geez, that was a big blob there. That's all right, I'm going to paint over that. Each time I'm cutting away, I'm really only trimming off about a minute, maybe even 30 seconds worth of painting time. These are going on quite well in the main. This necromancer cloak is a little thin for a grey, I'll admit. But again, thinking about the fact that these are, they're not base paints in the truest sense, so let's give that another thin coat over the top once this is dried. Now, one of the benefits to doing this on camera and experimenting with you guys kind of live is that I can issue, retractions and corrections on myself very quickly. Where I'd mentioned that Necromancer Cloak wasn't covering very well, I actually just squeezed out a little bit more of the medium and discovered that it was not covering because I hadn't mixed it properly. And, better that you know that I made the mistake than there's actually something wrong with the paint. After letting that go on, after giving it a proper shake, let's get on. I've got my desert yellow here, and I'm just going over all of the oops moments and tidying up before we give our model its dip. Well, shade in this case. So now is moment of truth time. You'll see this is the monster brush. This is loaded up with strong tone, and it has been reformulated, I get the impression, so that it behaves a little bit more like the stuff out of the pot does. So I'm going to generously apply this over the whole model, same as I would if I were using, say, Agrax Earthshade or some such. And going on, oh my goodness, it does look a little, it looks a little, is what we'll say. And we'll go around, and I'm going to get a little bit more on my brush. And let's just fill in that whole model using strong tone. And then we'll leave that for about half an hour, 40 minutes to dry and see what we've got. Ooh. Now once that's dried, I've gone ahead and given it a matte varnish spray, the anti-shine, as they suggested. Because even after, it is just an acrylic wash, it had a slight shine to it that I wasn't too keen on. And this is what I've got at the end of it. You can see there's one or two spots of white where I managed to spray something to the bleeding model, and now it's stuck there. So that's not the paint, that's me missing things. And, as far as just putting something on the table that is painted, that's not too bad. There's a lot of shading, it's got character. And if you put that down on the table, you can see very clearly what everything is. But I reckon it doesn't take much to go that little bit further. So I'm going to go back to good old desert yellow, and let's just paint a few areas back in that brighter color. Just anywhere that I want, a little more contrast. So along some of the higher points on the jacket here, try and paint in the same straight lines. So if you're drawing your brush down the model, you'll find it looks a little more quote-unquote realistic if you can keep that color flowing in the same direction. In some places that's going to be impossible, obviously, but have a go at it, and we'll see what that looks like after I've tidied that up a little bit. Now that looks a little nicer. That's a little bit closer to the original color, but leaving all of our shading intact. And I think that looks better on the table. What I'm going to do now is the same thing with all the other colors. I'm just going to go back to the first one I used and brighten up a little bit of them. So the hat, the jeans, so on and so forth. But I'll finish the skin off last because I do want to touch that up in a slightly different method. So now I've gone over most of the skin with tanned flesh again, leaving just the shading in the recesses. And what I've got now is just a little bit of barbarian flesh, and I'm going to just touch a few areas like cheekbones, nose. Let's do the back of her knuckles. And that will just set off that skin a little bit more, I think. Nice and simple. We're not reinventing the wheel here. One last thing that I know I keep saying one last thing, but I do want to do just a little bit more to the jacket because I don't think it takes much to really improve that basic look. So I've got here, this is a 50-50 mix. I've done desert yellow and skeleton bone because This is one of those colors that doesn't quite have a perfect highlight. Like, they have done the range in order to try and minimize the amount of mixing you do, but I think one or two of them are just a little bit out there as far as highlight colors go. So I'm just going to go around and pick out some extreme edges on any of the folds or what have you. So someone was asking me just now about painting clothing, and I want to do a specific video on that. But let's just pick, for example, down here, we've got this nice seam in the back of the jacket that runs all the way down. And we'll do the other side of that. And then areas here where we've left a little bit of shading, just a quick line, to help define some of the edge of that clothing. So let's go around now, the back of her sleeve. Collars are always a really good spot for this because you can do just a little L shape. And ta-da! That's nice and easy. So let's come back and look at this once I've done all of my jacket highlights. Now, I did get a little cocky there, and I should have gone down to a smaller brush for a couple of those lines. One or two of them are a little bit thicker than they probably should be. But in honesty, I'm actually quite pleased with how that turned out. So what I'm going to do now is pop a base on her. And here's where, unfortunately, I need to step away from the Army Painter stuff because I quite honestly just forgot to get some basing material for sort of deserty stuff. So I'm going to swap to my Citadel thing. We'll come back and look what she looks like when she's actually got her base. All that context. And with that simple base applied, our gunslinger is done. And I'll be honest, I'm pretty happy with that. I would definitely put that on the table. I don't see any reason why you wouldn't. I've gone ahead and done a little bit of dry brushing. The base color, the Tyrant skull that I put on there, flicked around the bottom of her coat and some of her boots, and yeah, that's cool. I like that. I think it's fair to say that Army Painter is not what I remember it being. So, ta-da! Good show there. I really enjoyed having a muck around, and I'm looking forward to trying some of the other colors. So you can expect to see some more of this. Army Painter stuff is not going to completely replace everything that's on the channel because I like to use a little bit of everything. And I think you guys getting to see other manufacturers is generally more helpful than me just sticking to one. But you are going to see some specific Army Painter tutorials, and I don't think that's a bad thing. Being as they do come up quite regularly in questions, hey, there you go, something to look forward to. And maybe you might find one or two colours out there that you actually like the look of yourself. So as always, guys, feel free to drop a comment in the old box below. Any questions or anything, particularly about the Army Painter range. I've been having a lot of fun playing around, so I might be able to answer straight away. Anything else you want to know? Like I said, pop a comment, say hi, and you guys enjoy the rest of your day.